Welcome to Front Office Pros. Today, we're going to be talking about anticipating year one to year two IDP players' value changes. So, there's a lot that's happened between year one and year two. There's some defensive players that have impressed, others not so much, but they're going to be getting some starting roles. We're going to be talking about them in this episode.
Hike!
All right, Joe. So, the first player we're going to be talking about is defensive end Will Anderson of the Houston Texans, the former Defensive Rookie of the Year this past season. Looking at ADP right now, based off the IDP show, our friends over there, we got Will Anderson as edge rusher 8. So that's going to be after the likes of Watt, Crosby, Parsons, Bosa, Garrett, Hutchinson, and Josh Allen. What do you think, Joe? You think that sounds about right? Too high, too low? Do you think people will overdraft for Will Anderson? Thoughts there?
Yeah, I think that could be about right, but I think people are definitely going to be excited about Will Anderson, and them bringing over Danielle Hunter, should only help them. I know Grenard was a pretty good running mate from last year, but Hunter's just kind of on another level, and I think both of them are going to wreak havoc in the backfields. So I would expect his value to rise from his rookie year.
Yeah, I mean, Will Anderson right now is 8, like I mentioned, but Danielle Hunter is number 9. I wonder, would you think people would draft Hunter before Anderson? I mean, Hunter's has been, we're talking from a redraft standpoint at this point. I mean, I would think that Hunter is more likely to have a stronger year than Anderson this year, right? I mean, Hunter has been so productive over these past years.
Yeah, I definitely could see Hunter going for more just because he's got the longer track record, and he's a super talented player, and he's been also a productive player when he's been on the field. And he had a great year last year with the Vikings, and had one who opposite of him in Minnesota, but he kind of burst on this scene. So having a guy like Will Anderson and him doing what he was doing, I mean, the both of them are going to benefit from having each other.
So next player we're going to be talking about is defensive end edge rusher Lukas Van Ness of the Green Bay Packers. Right now, his ADP is looking at number 47. So that's going to be behind the likes of Nolan Smith, Zadarius Smith, also guys like Malcolm Kuntz, Jonathan Cooper of your Broncos, Joe. What do you think about 47? You think that's too low, too high, just right? Thoughts there?
Yeah, I think that's probably the right spot for him. I mean, I don't really know what to expect from him this year. I thought he was going to do possibly a little bit more as a rookie. Was pretty underwhelming. But the Packers don't have too much at the edge rusher position. Obviously, Rashawn Gary's there, but the opportunities should be there for him. He just didn't do as well as I thought he could possibly do.
I don't know if that's true. I mean, they've got Preston Smith still. They have Kingsley and Nagarby. I mean, they do have some rotational guys. I don't think he's just the guy. I mean, when he came out of college in Iowa, he was more of a rotational guy. Anyways, he was never a starter over in Iowa. He just showed a lot of flash. So I don't know. I actually think it might be too high because I think he's the type of player that takes a little bit longer to develop. I could see him taking a year 3 or year 4 jump. Don't know if he's going to take that year 2 jump. Don't know. I don't expect a lot from him, to be honest.
Yeah, I'm not really either, but just with the other names that you said is around him, I think that's a decent spot.
Are you enjoying this episode so far? Well, if you are, subscribe to our YouTube channel, smash that like button, and hit the notification bell for upcoming videos. We do videos throughout the year, so you're not going to want to miss what we have in store. So going on to our next pass rusher here, and it's actually a little bit higher than Van Ness, but it's defensive end Yaya Diaby of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He right now is ranked as edge rusher number 40, Joe. So what are your thoughts on him? He's ahead of guys like Malcolm Kuntz and John Cooper. He's behind the likes of, let's see here, we've got Tuli Toipulotu. Also, you've got Sam Hubbard, Andrew Van Ginkel. Those are the guys that are ahead of him. So thoughts on Diaby?
Yeah, It's a decent spot for him, but I think he's actually got a chance to move up a little bit there. This year he was a third round pick out of Louisville, and I was pretty impressed with him in his rookie year. So I think he's got a chance to grow upon his rookie success and possibly get a little higher than the edge rusher 40.
Well, the reality is, I mean, Joe Tryon, former first round pick, I believe, has been a major disappointment for them. I mean, they did draft
Yep.
Chris Braswell, who I know you like a lot, but he might not be ready to go right away. They did bring, I believe, Randy Gregory is also there, but I think Diaby might be the best guy there. I think it's actually part of me feels like it's a little high. I do like him from a dynasty perspective. I just don't know if you're expecting a lot from him, in his second season.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, he was their best edge rusher last year, and I'm not so much. I don't think much is going to change. So I think it is fair to have somewhat high expectations for him coming into his sophomore season here.
All right, so head over to the defensive tackle position. We've got defensive tackle Jalen Carter. Jalen Carter is ranked as the number 7th defensive tackle. So that's ahead of the likes of Christian Barmore, Ed Oliver, Derek Brown, but behind the likes of, believe it or not, Dexter Lawrence and Christian Wilkins and Jeffrey Simmons. So what do you think about him at number 7, Joe? Too high or too low or just right?
I think that's a decent spot for him. I do think I don't know. I feel like he's a tough one.
You're not as sold on him, I feel like.
I'm definitely not. I have my he shows like good spurts, but he's not like I'd like him to potentially be a little bit more consistent. So I think 7's probably a fair spot for him. I know you probably think he should be higher.
I actually think he should be lower.
Oh, lower than 7.
Well, I mean, I like it from a dynasty perspective. I mean, he's super young. But I
Yeah.
mean, the reality is, would I rather have him over Ed Oliver and Derek Brown? Like, I don't think so. Would you?
No, because I mean, like you said, we've seen a lot of times it takes at least 3 years for the defensive tackles to develop, and those other guys are more established, have more time in the league. So I definitely could see your point there.
Or Barmore. I mean, Barmore is a stud. I mean, Barmore had a fantastic year last year. I mean, I think here's the thing: Eagles' defensive line is gonna complete change. I mean, Reddick's out. I mean, they've got Josh Sweat there, but I mean, there's no one that really scares you. I mean, you got Bryce Huff. Maybe Nolan Smith comes on the scene. Now he ends up being, this up and coming player. We didn't talk. We're not talking about him, but I don't know. I just think that there isn't really a lot of help for him. So it's like, how good is Carter really going to be? I know he had a great rookie season, but again, Brown was a stud last year. Barmore was a stud, and so was Oliver. If we're just talking 2024 alone, I think Carter, he'll get too much of a bump just based on the name recognition.
Yeah, I guess there's also, though, maybe if he is that dominant interior player and giving you that sack upside that he potentially has, I could see him landing around this spot as well.
You know what he is? He's a FOMO pick. Fear of missing out. People think that Jalen Carter is going to just jump on the scene, and he will. I believe he will. I just don't know if it'll be next year. But people are going to say, oh, I don't want to miss out. I don't want to look like a fool. So I'm going to take the guy with the major upside. I don't blame you, but I just don't. I'm a little. So that's why I think his ADP is high as it is.
Yeah, that is fair. I mean, seems like this is also for best ball, so that would be on par with the upside.
Yeah, I mean, from a best ball standpoint, that would make some sense. So the next guy here, Joe, one of your favorites, Kobie Turner. And Kobie Turner is ranked as defensive tackle 15. So that is ahead of the likes of, we're going to be talking about this guy a little bit later, but Calijah Kancey and Leonard Williams, but behind the likes of Javon Hargrave and Deron Payne and Jonathan Allen. Thoughts on Kobie Turner here?
Yeah, I think that's probably a fair spot for him. I think he definitely if he's able to expand upon his rookie season. I'm a little curious to see how he does without having Aaron Donald alongside of him. But I think that's probably a fair spot for him.
See, that's my concern, and that's why I think there'll be others like me who drop him because of it. Because I think obviously he had a great year, he had a ton of sacks, but did he? I just want to see it to believe. I'm not going to believe it until I see it again. That's what I'm trying to say.
You want to see it to believe it, yeah.
I want to see it to believe it, and so for me, that's where it's like, okay, let me see you do it without Aaron Donald.
Yeah, that makes total sense. But just could turn out that even without Aaron Donald, if he's still able to go to those sack numbers, I could easily see him lining up at this 15 spot here.
So looking at the next guy who I was just going to talk about, Calijah Kancey. He's right below Kobie Turner at defensive tackle 16. I think that this guy has more of an opportunity to kind of possibly be on the up and up. What do you think?
Yeah, he definitely has the potential. I know he had he's another guy that performed pretty well as a rookie. I don't have any issue with this spot. I think ahead of guys like Zach Allen, Leonard Williams, and Cam Hayward, I think that's a fine spot for him to sit.
So transitioning over to the linebacker position, we're going to be talking about this first guy who I think people were really excited about, being that he was a first-round pick last year but never really materialized. Linebacker Jack Campbell. Joe, he's regarded as linebacker 29, so that's behind the likes of Blake Cashman, Christian Harris, and Devin White, but ahead of the likes of Trenton Simpson, Kaiser White, Eric Kendricks, and Troy Anderson. So what are your thoughts on 29 for Campbell? Too high, too low, or just right?
Yeah, 29 seems a little low. I think he's got potential to have a better sophomore season. I think he just needed a little bit of time to adapt to the NFL and the system, but it seemed like by the end of the season, the Lions were more confident in him, saw more playing time. So I think as long as he stays on that trajectory, I think he's got a chance for some decent improvement in his sophomore season here, and think there's room for him to move up those ranks.
See, I'm going to disagree with you on this one. I think he's an avoid candidate for me. I mean, they still have Alex Anzalone there, and believe it or not, interestingly, I mean, Anzalone is linebacker 34 to Jack Campbell's 29. So, I mean, to me, I just think Anzalone had such a good season last year, and kind of honestly, I don't know what you want to call it, but he stole people's hearts because people were hoping that Jack Campbell would be the guy, and he wasn't. So I'm a little skeptical. I think I'd go elsewhere. But I think personally, I think the value is about right. He is a name, so maybe he'd go a little bit higher, but I think it's about right. So let's talk about our next linebacker. I just mentioned him, linebacker Trenton Simpson, Baltimore Ravens. He now steps in now that Patrick Queen went to the division rivals of the Pittsburgh Steelers. I actually am a little surprised as to how high he is. I guess IDP, if you play an IDP, these things. You won't be like, who's Trenton Simpson? But to my surprise, I think he's pretty high at linebacker 30. But is that just right, Joe, or even is it too low?
I feel like this is a good spot for him at 30. He's obviously taken over for Patrick Queen, and Queen's coming off of a really good year that he had last year. So if he's able to step in, and it's going to be hard for him to have probably as a productive year as Queen had last year, but if he can just do a decent job filling those shoes, there's definitely a big opportunity for Trenton Simpson. I think this is a fair spot just because we haven't really seen him play that much. It was a small sample size, but he performed pretty well when he did get the chance. So just curious. It'll be interesting to see how he actually does really with his first full starting season here.
Opportunities knocking for the guy.
Yeah.
I like him as an upside pick. I think he's a good value. It's so hard to know your IDP leagues. I mean, he's a guy who I could think people could be like, I got to get in my back pocket and I'm ready for him when the time comes because he's the guy I want. So do people overdraft the guy? I don't know. It's a tough read. I think it's too early to tell yet, but he's definitely a guy he'd be on my watch list for sure.
Oh yeah. I mean, for IDP, all we want is opportunity, and he's got a great opportunity. I mean, linebacker opposite of Roquan Smith there in Baltimore, and just seeing the role that Queen has left behind, and he's got the speed to be that blitzing guy and play coverage like Patrick Queen. So, opportunity, like you said, is definitely knocking for him. It's just a matter of, how much he takes it.
So as we progress to our next position, the cornerback position, going to switch it up a little bit, Joe. Who's your cornerback of choice here that you think will have good value?
Yeah, I'm going to go with cornerback Tyrique Stevenson with the Chicago Bears. He had a pretty productive rookie season, was able to get 86 tackles, 4 interceptions, also 16 pass deflections. And I know Jalen Johnson signed. He's there. Always like to have another good cornerback out, alongside the corners that I pick in IDP, just because you won't have like that Pat Surtain situation where teams just avoid that side of the field altogether. So I think Stevenson will still get plenty of targets, even though he was pretty productive as a rookie last year.
Yeah, Stevenson, I mean, we've always talked about it's always helpful to have a second quarterback in there, with Jalen Johnson being there. And cornerback 9 for Tyrique Stevenson. I think that's just about right. Interestingly, you got those nickel guys ahead of him, Joe, who you like, with Nate Hobbs, Keeson Nixon, and Kenny Moore. Those are the guys that are ahead of him. But, I think Steve's had a really good year. I can't see why people would fade him now. I think he's going to be. I think his value is going to continue to do what he did last year.
Yeah, I agree with you.
My guy. Let's transition to my guy. My guy is going to be cornerback Joey Porter. Now he's really low. He's cornerback 33. So I mean, you're talking about 33 for corners. That's pretty low. I just think that he had some really, from what I could tell, it didn't show up in the box score, but he had a lot of good, from what I could tell, coverage ratings. And I think now that Dante Jackson's there, and this defense, honestly, is a little bit better. I think they made some improvements with adding Queen and some other guys. I think that Joey Porter might get some more action. So I like him as a possible value change from year 1 to year 2. I think he could take a leap.
Yeah, I know there's definitely a lot of people that like Joey Porter Jr. I'm still a little skeptical, and like you were saying earlier, I will believe it when I see it as well. But I'd still be a little nervous that, if he does continue to show like lockdown corner skills, potentially, if they just avoid that side of the field on him, because Dante Jackson doesn't scare me.
He doesn't?
No.
No. I mean, I think he's serviceable nonetheless. But
Right, he's serviceable, but I mean, if you're talking about Joey Porter Jr., taking that next step and truly becoming a lockdown corner, I think the amount of times quarterbacks target him could reduce.
So last guy we're going to be talking about, and in our minds, he's a safety. Safety Brian Branch. Our friends over at the IDP show treat him as a corner. They have him at cornerback number 2. So what are your thoughts there? I guess this is where it is interesting because depending on how what your IDP format's like, whether there's dual eligibility, whether there is is it DB, linebacker, and defensive line, or do they break it out by each position? There's a lot of factors to consider, but I mean, you and I, we consider him as a safety in our league. He really plays the nickel. Is he just a nickel corner, or is he the big nickel? He plays a lot of that nickel area of the field.
Yeah. I mean, he's one of those tweener type players that can really play both roles. But I think I think he is more of a potentially a safety than a true nickel corner, but honestly, it doesn't really matter too much. Because I do think, number two, I think even if you were ranking him as a safety, you're gonna have him right around that same spot. Well, maybe not. More so, probably top. He's gonna be a top 5 safety, based on our rankings before.
Yeah, and based on the IDP show rankings that we're referencing here, he would slot in at number 5. So you'd have Derwin James, Antoine Winfield, Kyle Hamilton, all those guys would be
Right.
ahead of him. Actually, he would be safety 4 with Jesse Bates as 5. But I think it's just about right. I mean, he showed that in some games he was absolutely electric. I think some people would really, mind you though, I don't believe he was fully healthy last year either. He missed some games. So I think that this is a guy that people could really target.
Yeah, definitely. And I think too, the Lions have really improved the outside corners on their team as well. They've made it a focusing on the secondary. So wondering if they have better corners on the outside, if that allows him to play a little bit more freely and possibly get his hands on the ball more. I mean, we've seen when he does get his hand on the ball, how he's able to take them back for touchdowns. So if he's able to get more of those opportunities, definitely he's going to continue to be the top guy.
So that does it for this episode where we covered anticipating year 1 to year 2 IDP player value changes. Hopefully you found this as helpful as we gear up for the start of the season as we talk about IDP. And just recently we did an episode where we covered the top 40 rookies and we included IDP. You're going to want to check that out if you're in IDP leagues and you like IDP content. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time.